Get going, young man.
Thank you. Islam.
What happened to your hand? You got a nice hair. Why you cut it off? It's hot. Okay.
It'll come back, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Unlike ours, as we get older.
This is what my brother-in-law did. You know the one who came the other day?
Yes.
He shaved his head off the line.
Ah,
So he got a friend now. He's not by himself.
okay. He's got company.
He got company.
So, and inshallah, we'll get started. रिमोट उधर ही जाके दिखा दो हाँ रिमोट उधर है रिमोट चाहिए था क्या चाहिए अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला सय्यिदिना मौलाना मुहम्मद व अला आलि सय्यिदिना मौलाना मुहम्मद मुबारक सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि सलातु व सलाम अलैका या सय्यदी या रसूलुल्लाह أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين يا خاتم النبيين يا شفيع المذنبين يا أنيس الغريبين يا رحمة للعالمين. So, last week we were, of course, continuing with the classes on Ahlul Bayt, and again, kind of reiterate that we're kind of doing this somewhat in a chronological order. But last week we spoke about the Hajj of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then on the way back, stopping at Ghadir Khum and declaring or making the announcement of Man kunta Mawla fahada Aliyun Mawla. So whomsoever I am his Mawla, Ali is also his Mawla. And as we mentioned, this is a narration where you have all 10 of the Ashar Mubashshar narrating it, 9 of the wives of Rasulullah narrating it, and then at least 11 other companions narrating it, through multiple chains, occurs in multiple books. You have maybe 1 or 2 of these narrations, or a few of these narrations that may be classified as weak, but all of the rest of them, you look at the narrators, you look at all the other aspects of the hadith, from an objective standpoint, as far as the science of hadith, they are undeniable. However, you still have people that deny it. And these are the people that will mislead or deceive the people. And the way they do this is they'll pick out one of those narrations where you have someone in the chain that might be weak. And they'll present that to the people. Oh, see, he's quoting, because many people, when they quote it, they simply say, Rasulullah said, Man kunta mawla fahada aliyun mawla. They don't go into all of the other details of it. And so they'll pick one of those that has a chain that might be weak, and they present that to their I guess stooges, and say, oh, see, and they put that on YouTube and say, oh, see, he's quoting this narration that's weak and all these other things, but then they skip over all the other 20 or so narrations whose chain is very strong. And so, as I said, and I'm going to reiterate this, you find this in Musannaf Abi Shayba, who's one of the teachers of Imam Bukhari. You find this in Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal's Musnad, which is he's also one of the teachers of Imam Bukhari. You find this in Tirmizi, in Nisa'i, in Ibn Majah, At-Tabari. I mean, just multiple chains and multiple scholars of hadith that have narrated it through various chains. It's just not like Imam Ahmad, within his Musnad you have the same hadith occurring several different times with different narrators. So, but it's helpful for us when people deny it, because the reason it's helpful for us, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that to Ali that only a believer will love you and only a hypocrite will have animosity against you. So, and you know, Abu Sayyid Khudri radiallahu anhu, Ibn Abbas radiallahu, they all, and many scholars, I mean many Sahaba, they've said that, you know, the way we would know who was a hypocrite and who was a true believer, you know, we would simply take the name of Ali in front of them, and simply by the expression on their faces we knew. So when people deny this, and you know, whenever you start praising Ali, they start jumping up and down, or at least you can tell that inside they're very uncomfortable. You know, we should thank them for telling us who they are. You know, we don't have to worry about, okay, you know, who this guy is. So you automatically know. You know, according to what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given us that criteria, so we know. Okay. So that's. Oh. So as you know, we're going, and again, you look at historically, you look at all of these great scholars. At some point in time in their lives, they were all accused of being Shia because of their love for Ahlul Bayt. Even though, you know, they're not Shia, you know, they're the furthest thing away from Shia. But that's what they're accused of, because the other side just couldn't take them talking about Ali in a proper and appropriate way. And we see that today, you know, and it's even, you know, kind of more exacerbated because of social media. And, you know, you'll see people denying things that until about maybe, you know, 200 or 300 years ago, no one denied. And then suddenly now, so now the knowledge came to them. So now suddenly they've been enlightened and they're denying things that no one denied before. Okay. And the reason they deny those things is because those things are the things that go to the credit of Ahlul Bayt. So now, you know, so this was the 18th of Dhul Hajj when this statement is made in front of, you know, this huge gathering of companions. And so now from here, you know, they arrive back in Medina Munawwara somewhere around the 21st of Dhul Hajj. And for the first few weeks of his arrival back in Medina, everything is calm. No issues coming up, no problems. You have delegations that are still coming and visiting him, you know, paying or giving allegiance to him. And so this is going on, but then not long, I guess within about 3 or 4 weeks after arriving back in Medina, what happens is that there was a Byzantine governor. So he was appointed by Heraclius as the governor of Ma'an, which is an area, I guess, in modern day South Jordan. And so he's the governor there, but you know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he sent these letters out, he just didn't send them to the kings. He also sent letters to and people calling dawah or calling the people to Islam, even to the governors and the local leaders. So you know, it wasn't just 1 or 2 people taking letters. You had a vast number of letters being sent out, you know, being carried in person by a representative of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the letter was the invitation, but that person there who was sent with the letter was there to answer any questions about the letter and about Islam. So this governor, whose name was Farwa bin Umar, radiallahu anhu, he accepts Islam. When he receives the message, he accepts Islam. And he writes a letter back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, declaring his acceptance of Islam and his allegiance with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Well, you know, of course, the upper hierarchy wasn't going to have any of this. So basically, he's arrested, and then he's taken to Jerusalem. put on trial, found guilty of treason. He's beheaded and his body is crucified.
Because he accepted Islam?
He accepted Islam, and for them, for the Byzantines, this was basically he changed allegiance. Because now his loyalty is no longer to Heraclius and the Byzantine Empire. Now it's to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So again, and at this point he hadn't even done anything, against the Romans, but they knew that now his allegiance has changed, so that changed the dynamic. So that's why they had him arrested, accused of treason. He's killed or executed, and then they crucified the body. And they did this, crucifixion of the body. Then, they do this. This became a common thing. Somebody's executed. His head was sent to wherever the leader was, and you crucified the body, basically as a lesson to everybody else that if you're thinking about doing anything, here's what's going to happen to you. So it was a deterrent, or used as a deterrent. So when this happens, of course, that creates bigger issues now between the Muslims, Rasulullah and the Muslims, and Heraclius and his empire. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he starts arranging for an army to go and deal with this issue. And the army, the general of the army, the leader of the army will be Osama bin Zayd, who at this time, is in his late teens, 17, 18, somewhere in there. And yet underneath him are all of these great companions. Osama radiallahu anhu had a very close connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he is the son of Zayd bin Haritha, who was the young man, who was a slave of Bibi Khadija radiallahu anha, the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when they got married, she gave him to him. He freed him, but Zayd bin Haritha never left. And so, long story short, cutting out a lot of details here, eventually Zayd marries Ayman, whose name is Baraka. She is an Abyssinian who was a slave. She was actually the slave of Rasulullah's father. She was there when Rasulullah was born. Of course, he later on freed her. She's also going to be there when he passes. But Zayd bin Haritha was much younger than her, married her, because Rasulullah wanted somebody to marry her. And so Zayd married her, even though he's much, much younger. She was at an age where she should not have given birth, yet from this marriage comes the birth of Osama bin Zayd, which in itself is a miracle. And so this is the general that Rasulullah has appointed for this army, the leader of the army. And so, they're making preparations to go. And in the meantime, toward the end of the month of Safar, so this is Muharram, next month is Safar, and then after that will come Rabiul Awwal. So at the end of the month, or towards the end of the month of Safar, is when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam falls ill, starts having this real high fever, and he says to the people, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave his servant a choice, that he could either remain in this world or he could choose to be with his Lord, and the servant has chosen the latter. And so when he says this, many of the companions understood what this meant. Because Rasulullah has said that he was, again, he was given the choice. He could live with the believers for much longer, or he could go back, because the mission is accomplished. So now, you think about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. he came from his Lord. Because again, he is the first creation, created before anything else. And everything else other than Allah is creation. Right? Time is the creation of Allah. Place is the creation of Allah. Jannah, Jahannam, the throne, the low, the qalam, the kursi, everything is the creation of Allah. And yet the nur of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was created before all of these other things. So where was he? If there is no place, right, and there is no time, where was he and when was he? He is with his Lord. That's all we can say. I mean, that's all we can say. Because we can't say when, because when implies time. And we can't say a place, because we know we can't ascribe a place to Allah. Because Allah is before and beyond and above all of this. So all we can say is that he was with his Lord. And then when everything else is created, then he sends his beloved to his creation, to the rest of creation. The verse, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Rasulullah that we have not sent you except as a mercy to all of Alameen. Alam, of course, is translated as world, but Alam in reality is anything other than Allah. Alameen is everything included. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rabbul Alameen. He is the cherisher and sustainer of all of creation. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rabb, he has sent his Habib as Rahmah, as the mercy. But in this verse itself, it says, we have not sent you. Where did he send him? He sent him to creation. Which means that before this, he was not in the rest of creation. Just like if I have a box in this room, and I ask somebody to pick this up, or I pick the box up and I move it over to the corner. I can't say that I sent the box to the room, because the box is already in the room. If the box is outside of the room, and then I take that box and put it in the room, now I can say that I sent the box to the room. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we did not send you except as a mercy to all of creation. So again, he's beyond. So we see this also in Miraj and the night of Ascension. He longs, he's missing that. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls him back for a visit. Because this was right after his uncle Hazrat Abu Talib radiallahu anhu passed, and his wife Bibi Khadija al-Kubra radiallahu anha, she passed. Both of them were his strongest supporters in Makkah. She was and when they passed, now he's yearning, feeling homesick, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls him back home. And this is what he's saying. He says, your Lord gave a servant the option, either stay here or come back, and the servant has chosen the latter. And this gets into so many other things, and I'm kind of deviating a little bit simply from Ahlul Bayt, but it is connected. Because people will say that, death has a prescribed time, and there's nothing that can alter it. Well, it's true that death has a prescribed time, okay? But there are things that can alter it, such as dua and other things. And there are those for whom they have that option. And a simple example of this is Musa al-Islam. Sahih Bukhari. Okay, so Musa al-Islam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Sayyidul Anbiya, so he is the leader of Musa al-Islam. In Sahih Bukhari, we see the narration where when the angel of death came to Musa al-Islam and started to take his soul, Musa al-Islam slapped him so hard that his eye fell out. And the angel of death picks up his eye and goes to Allah and says, Ya Allah, whatever goes to Allah means. But, you know, he says to Allah, Ya Allah, you know, I went to your servant, this is what he did to me. So he says, go back and ask him why. So he comes back, but now when he comes back, you know, his eye's back in. Now when he comes back, you know, he's very cautious, keeping his distance. And so he asked him, he says, why'd you, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered me to take your soul, and why'd you do this? So here, even here, we see this delay. Okay? So first thing, you didn't give salam. Alright? And the other, why you come, you know, what about, you know, taking my soul? So he says, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you an option. So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the angel of death that take one of the angels with you as a cow. And he says, what's the option? He says, you can put your hand, you know, if you want to stay, you can, you know, put your hand on the back of the cow, and as many hair come underneath your hand will extend your life that many years. He says, then what? And he says, thumma ma, then what? He said, thumma al-maut, then death.
Come back to you.
Yeah, come back to the same end. He says, fine, then take me now.
So that's telling that no matter how long you live, you still got to
Well,
know.
the end is still the same, right? But here it also teaches us that there are those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the option to. And of those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the option to, who is the most deserving of having that option? Other than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? The other thing is, Jibreel could never enter the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam without permission of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we're going to come back to this point to understand. And this is also why on the night of Ascension, Jibreel entered the house without permission, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wasn't sleeping in his own house. This is why he wasn't sleeping. This is one of the reasons why he wasn't sleeping in his own house. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him sleeping somewhere else. But those are points that I want to come back to. So coming back to the illness. You know, the illness was such that, you know, it'd have high fever. There are a lot of details again here that I'm going to skip over because we need to get back to the Ahlul Bayt aspect of this. You know, they put a wet rag on his forehead, and the fever was so high that it would immediately go dry. And so people ask, why did he have such a, you know, I guess, hard time at that moment? So this is, you know, of course, before he passes, but, you know, several days go on like this. And this is also ikhtiyar. This is the authority of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he asked that the difficulties that the ummah would face at the time of their death should be given to him in place of the ummah. Again, this is his love for us. So he takes it upon himself, you know, because again, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created him special so he can bear all of this. And eventually what happens is that he starts, you know, after, you know, discussing things with the rest, because he was initially going from one house to another house, and, you know, to one wife, and then the other wife, and the other wife, and eventually he gets permission, or he requests them, rather I should say, put it this way, he requests the other wives that he simply stay at the house of Aisha radiallahu anha through this time of the illness, and they all, you know, say yes. So he stays there basically for the last few days. Okay. During this time, you know, various companions are coming, and also during this time he assigns Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu to lead the salat in his absence. So whenever he's not there, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu leads the salat. And this was his direct order, that Abu Bakr will lead the salat. The army that I was talking about will be important to remember. This army that, if you remember the army of Osama bin Zayd, that he himself, gets ready to go and deal with the Byzantine issues. When they hear, as they're getting ready to leave, but when they hear about the illness, they stop. And so some of them also come back into Medina to kind of deal with things and come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam kind of to look after things. Okay. When so many things going on. One point also that's important to note here is there is one day when he's feeling better, so he comes out, and it would be Ali radiallahu anhu and generally Abbas, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Ali, who would help or kind of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from one place to the other place, and he would basically use their shoulders to help move around. So one day, the salat is starting. Abu Bakr radiallahu is, in the front. Everybody's getting ready to make salat. Iqamah has been called, and Rasulullah starts to come. And when they see him coming, everybody stops. And when Abu Bakr radiallahu sees him, he wants to back up and become part of the first row, and have Rasulullah in the front. And Rasulullah motions to him, stay where you are. So he stays where he is, but then Rasulullah comes and sits on the left of Abu Bakr. And they make salat. A lot of people, when they read this hadith, they say, oh, see, Rasulullah made salat behind Abu Bakr. Or Abu Bakr led the salat and Rasulullah was the muqtadi. But if you read the hadith, the hadith specifically says that Rasulullah sat to the left of Abu Bakr. So if you have two people making salat, the imam and one muqtadi, one person following him, the imam is where? The imam is toward the left, and the follower is on the right of the imam. Right? Okay. So here, when I look at this, Rasulullah is sitting to the left of Abu Bakr, and Abu Bakr is on the right side of Rasulullah sallallahu. So the reality of it is that Rasulullah sallallahu is leading Abu Bakr in salat, and Abu Bakr is leading the rest of everybody else in salat. So the illness, goes on for several days, and then one day suddenly it's as if he's better. And when they see this, everybody's at ease. Oh, he's better. No problems now. But Abbas, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he sees this, he realizes, and he comes to Ali, and he says, look, let's go to him and ask him who will lead after him. Because I have seen this, in the house of Abdul Muttalib, that this is, when this happens, that means, that they're about to pass. They'll be sick, and suddenly they're better, and then they pass. And Ali says, no, I won't do that. I'm not going to ask him. If he says this himself, then that's one thing, but I'm not going to ask. And he says, why not? He says, well, if he says that authority will be with somebody else, then what does that change? One thing that happened before this was that one of those days that he had a very high fever, he makes a statement. He says to the people, he says, bring me a sheet of paper, and I will write down for you what you need to do after me so you won't go astray. And Umar stopped the people from getting anything. And so the Shia, they use this and say, so see, he was going to say that Ali would be the Khalifa and all these other things, but Umar, and that's why Umar stopped him. Stopped the people from getting the paper, and so now he couldn't do that, so that was what he was going to do. And so see, Umar disobeyed the Prophet. So that's what they use. Again, coming to the reality, because when you look at things historically, you also have to look at who's doing what. Because based on the character of the person involved, that changes how you understand what's done. And the example that I like to give, which is the simplest thing for me at least, like if I say that so and so cut, like John cut Jim's stomach. It means something very different is if John is a psychopath versus John being a surgeon. So if a surgeon cuts somebody's stomach, then so if I specified that John was a surgeon and said John, Dr. John cut Jim's stomach, well, the picture in your head is very different, because now you're thinking about a scalpel and a surgeon and doing surgery to fix somebody. Whereas, if I say, Charles Manson, cut someone's stomach, it's a very different picture. One, you got a psychopathic murderer, and the other, you got someone who's, trying to fix things. So here you have to look at things, and then you also look at things in context to everything else. So the reality of why Umar stopped the people from getting any paper was that he sees Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this moment of pain and difficulty, high fever. He's going through all of this. If he, and at that time, even talking is difficult. When you get really, really sick, you don't want to say anything. You're just laying around, right? And so this is why Umar radiyallahu, because he, in Umar radiyallah's mind, if they get the paper and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam starts dictating anything, that's going to cause more discomfort for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he didn't want that. And the other aspect of that is, if that was the intention of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after that he was fine for a while. There were moments when he was perfectly fine. He didn't ask for the paper again. Okay. But then we also go back to Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh in Hudaybiyah, and we spoke about this, when he refused to erase Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If I try to, how do you justify that? Again, he did that out of love. So the same thing here, Umar radhiyallahu anhu is doing what he's doing out of love. So that day or part of the day, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is better, the fever has subsided, he's getting up and moving a little bit. So now, more people are coming. And the household has always been there. So Ali radhiyallahu was pretty much there, he was in and out all the time. He was there most of the time. Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha, she's there. Of course, this is happening in the house of Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, so she's there. Hassan and Hussein are there, alayhimus salam, with their grandfather. Hazrat Abbas radiallahu anhu is coming and going. The uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is coming and going a good bit. And so this is, so now when things, the fever starts to come back, and those who are there realize, and especially the household realizes, that this is the end. And so this is when, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says something to Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, she starts crying. and then he whispers something to her again, and she starts smiling. I mean, to be Fatima Salamullah alayha, yeah. So he says this to be Fatima Salamullah alayha, and she starts crying, and then he whispers something else to her, and she starts smiling. And later on, 6 months later, when she passes, Bibi Aisha Siddiqa radhiyallahu anha says that this is what he had said to her, and that's why she was smiling, that she would be the first from his household to come and join him. Yeah. No, Aisha radhiyallahu anha is the one who said that. She said that this is what it meant. When Bibi Fatima Salamullah alayha passed away, then after that she said that this is what Rasulullah had said to her. This is what. So before he said to her that that he was about to go, and she starts crying, and then he says to her that you will be the first to join me from the household, and she starts smiling, and she's overjoyed. So Aisha radhiyallahu anha is the narrator of the hadith. In the end, everyone's there, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells most of the people to leave, and they leave, including Aisha Siddiqa radhiyallahu anha. And then basically what happens is Jibreel alayhi salam asks permission to come in, and he's given permission. And then he comes and he asks permission to bring Israel alayhi salam, and he's given permission.
So Israel come with Jibreel?
Hmm?
Say Israel come with a Jibreel?
With Jibreel, yes. And so then he passes, but things here, and again, we've talked about this before. We'll talk about it more later, and we'll talk about it right now as well. Because you have so many people. Oh, he died. He's dead. He's dead. The thing is, you look at the Quran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the shuhada, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لَمَنْ يُقْتَلُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٌ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. And then وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. And that do not say about those who have been slain in the way of Allah that they are dead. No, they are alive. For surety they are alive, but you don't perceive it. And do not even think that those who have been slain in the way of Allah that they are dead. In reality they are alive, and they are given their sustenance. Because when a person dies, his sustenance ends with him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is re-emphasizing this point, that they aren't dead. They are still given their sustenance. We just don't perceive it. Just like there's so many things that we don't perceive. Like Kiram and Katibin, beside us on our shoulders. We know they're there because the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that they're there. We don't know it. We don't see it. We don't perceive it. Are the angels alive or dead? They're alive. But again, we don't perceive it. And so there's the jinn. They're around. We don't see them. Are they alive or dead? The ones that are around are alive. They also have death. So again, there's so many things that we have no perception of, and yet they are alive. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the shuhada, that they are alive and don't even think that they're dead. Okay. For the Anbiya, this is general for the Anbiya. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about them. He says, in several places, he says that the prophets are alive in their graves, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it haram on the earth to consume them, which also re-emphasizes that they're alive. which is interesting because you look at the earth. What is the nature of the earth? Whatever you put in it, if it's dead, it consumes it. Even things that have like half-lives that are, a million years, eventually it will break down, right? And yet there are things in the earth that the earth doesn't consume, and things that are in the earth that actually grow and are nurtured by the earth. What are those things? Those things are the things that are alive. So you think about this, a tree. The roots of the tree are in the earth, right? The tree is alive. So long as the tree is alive, the roots are alive. The tree dies, the roots die. What happens, so before, when the tree was alive, the roots were actually growing in the earth, right?
Yeah, that's how they start them out.
Yeah. But now when the tree is dead, what happens to those roots? The earth consumes them. Same thing like with the hibernating, bear goes into a cave and hibernates. It's in the earth, right? There are other animals that actually dig burrows in the earth and they hibernate. So long as they're alive, the earth doesn't consume them. If they die in that state, now the earth consumes them. Rasulullah ﷺ said about the prophets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it haram on the earth to consume the bodies of the prophets. Why? Because they're still alive.
But the body's still saying.
For the prophets, yes. For the prophets, yes.
So the body's still saying about first when he was dying or passed him and left this earth.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so for the prophets, the body is the same. And especially for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of us, like when we die, we have, I guess what you'd call a representative body somewhere else. Whether Illiyin or Sijjin. So the good souls, where the good souls go, or where the bad souls go. So there are representative forms there. Okay? So that soul is taken and placed here or placed there, depending on whether it's a good person or a bad person. For Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? He says, "Wala sawfa yu'tika rabbuka fatarda." And he says, one is that I'll give you so much that you'll be pleased with me. But he also says in Surah Wadduha, "Wadduha wal-layli idha saja, ma wadda'aka rabbuka wa ma qala, walal akhiratu khayrun laka min al-ula." That every coming moment is better than the one before. Okay. Of course, they translate it a lot as, and your hereafter is better than this life. Yeah, but it's really more to it than that, because with us, we are either going up or down. We're never constant. Okay? Angels are constant. Our iman is up or down. The iman of the prophets is always going up, as prophets in general. Okay? And for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is no zawal, there is no descent. There's only ascent, as far as his status, his position, all of these things. So, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is something that is undisputed, or at least I should rephrase that. At least was undisputed until a couple of hundred years ago. Something that it doesn't matter whether it's a Deobandi scholar, or a Barelwi scholar, or a Hadith scholar, or any of all these other scholars. They acknowledge, at least they used to, today is a different issue. They used to acknowledge that the sand touching the body of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Rawda, in the grave, is superior to the Kaaba, superior to even the throne, because of his connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he himself is superior to all of creation, and all of these things are creation, right? So the question arose that his soul is taken out from the body. Where do you put it? you can't put it anywhere that's less than him, because for him there is no descent. And so the decision is put it back with him. And that gets into other things as well. And those are things we'll come back to later on, inshallah. Yeah. But I'm kind of deviating a good bit today. But all of this connects back to Ahlul Bayt again. Because again, Ahlul Bayt are made for him, from him. But so when he passes, so now he passes. So there several questions arise. First question is, where do we bury him? And so some said Jannatul Baqi, some said here, some said there. And this is when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him that the prophets are buried where they pass. So he passes in the house of Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha. This also reminds me of something. I'm bouncing here a little bit. Before all of this, when the illness was going on, you had various companions who had houses whose doors opened into the masjid. Because of the commotion, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered that all of those doors should be closed. They would have to use the back door to come in and out of their houses. And the doors connected to the masjid itself, because it was, because his door was also connected to the masjid, those doors had to be closed. The only doors that were allowed to remain open was the door of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and the door of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhu, which is the door of Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. Okay. So, but that just, when I said the house of Aisha Siddiqa, that just kind of reminded me of that. Okay. So now, first question is, where do we bury him? And the final decision is made, okay, the house of Aisha, because this is where he passed. He would be buried in this house. Okay. Which again is connected to the masjid at that time, which is now within the masjid today. Okay. The other question that arose is, so the burial question, Abu Bakr answers that. The other question that comes up is, do we give him ghusl? Because he's already pure. And so the decision was that we give him ghusl, and actually the way that they came up with this decision was that they're discussing this, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends sakina upon them, and this peace and tranquility. They all kind of dozed off for a second, and when they woke up, they all came to the same answer, which was that we give him ghusl, to make it sunnah for the ummah, but we don't. His clothes will remain on. Like for us, when we die, the clothes are taken off. Of course, there's a sheet on top, so no one's looking at you. But there's still, the clothes are gone. You have a sheet on top, and you bathe through the sheet. So a person who's doing the bathing, will wrap their hands in some cloth so they're not, feeling the body, and bathe the person in that manner. With Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the clothes remained. The other question that came up is, what about Salatul Janazah? So you'll see this in the books of Hadith where they talk about the Salatul Janazah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you don't actually read the Hadith underneath there, just reading that, you think, oh, there was Salatul Janazah. What is referred to as Salatul Janazah for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not what we normally think of Salatul Janazah. So there was no Salatul Janazah in the way we do Salatul Janazah, for everybody else. In Salatul Janazah, we make the dua. Allahumma ighfir li hayyina wa mayyitina wa shahidina wa ghaibina wa saghirina wa kabirina wa dhakarina wa unthana. And that, oh Allah, forgive, those that are present and those who have passed. Forgive, or those who are alive and those who have passed, and those who are present and those who are absent, and those who are small and those who are big, and those who are male and those who are female. So there's asking for forgiveness. But this is Salatul Janazah for the adults. If you look at Salatul Janazah for an innocent child, the dua is different. For the child, the dua is, "Oh Allah," the rough meaning is, "Oh Allah, make this child a farth for us." So farth is the one that goes ahead and prepares for the coming of the caravan behind. Farth was like in an army or in a caravan, it would be the person that would be sent ahead to make arrangements so that when the caravan or the army arrived, things were prepared for them. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, before he passed, he made this statement that I'm going as a farth for you. I'm going to prepare things for your coming. Okay. So for the innocent child, we don't say, "Oh, forgive this child," because how do you forgive someone that's already innocent? The meaning of innocence is that they're forgiven. So make them a farth for us, and make them a treasure and a treasure for us, and also allow them or make them an intercessor for us. That is the dua for the child. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Sayyidul Ma'sumin. He is the master and the leader of all those that are innocent. Anyone who ascribes a sin to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself has committed a sin. So when the question arose about Salatul Janazah, it was no Salatul Janazah in that form. But what they did was that 10 people would come in, because there's only room for 10 people in the hujra, after the bathing, and we'll come back to the bathing, and we're going to come back to this part of it as well, is that 10 people would come, they would recite Salatul Salam on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ali radhiyallahu would be there teaching them what to say. And they would stand there, recite Salatul Salam on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would leave, and another 10 people would come. And this process went on until everybody had an opportunity. So now, coming back to the bathing. So once it was decided that yes, he would be bathed, but he would bathe in this manner. So Ali radiallahu anhu is the one who bathed him. And the water that would accumulate around the eyes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ali radiallahu would draw that up and drink it. And so he did, this process, and Abbas radiallahu anhu and some of his sons helped in the process of the bathing, as far as turning him and giving the water. So he passed on Monday, and according to most narrations, the 12th of Rabiul Awwal. And this is a point that we'll come back to later on. Because a lot of people try to abuse this in various ways. But he's not buried until Wednesday, late in the afternoon on Wednesday. Because everybody, there's this whole process, and you got all of these people that are coming, and to make this, to do the Salatul Salam on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so that takes time. So you got all of this going on, so it takes quite a bit of time. And as this is going on, you have Abu Bakr and Umar standing at the door. And you have Uthman radiallahu anhu going amongst the people, kind of consoling them as they're coming. Ali radiallahu, of course, is inside, conducting, teaching the people what to say, and moving things along in a smooth fashion. That Wednesday, when as this is all going on, suddenly there's kind of a commotion, there's some rumors spreading, and someone comes and says something to Uthman radiallahu anhu, and Uthman radiallahu anhu immediately comes to Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu and tells the two of them, who then go inside and tell Ali radiallahu anhu. And the rumor, or what's going on, is that while these companions are here, there is a meeting going on amongst the Ansar, or at least amongst some of the Ansar, as to who will become the Khalifa now, who will be the leader after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what instigated this meeting was that the hypocrites had spread a rumor that it's already been decided that Umar radiallahu anhu will be the Khalifa. The Ansar at this time had some hard feelings with Umar because he had married one of their women and it didn't work out and he divorced her. So, that created a little bit of tension there. The hypocrites, kind of seized those feelings to spread this rumor, so now you create a commotion. So when they told, when this news is now, of course, comes from Uthman radiallahu anhu to Umar and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and they come and tell Ali. Ali radiallahu anhu is the one who says to these two that you two go and deal with that, and I will take care of things here. So he's the one who sent them. So this also comes back to, because the Shia accused them of running off and doing things. Well, who sent them? Ali radiallahu anhu is the one who sent them. So he sends them to go and deal with the situation, because he also knows what's behind the issue. And of course now, it's like anywhere, when somebody passes away, it can bring out the best in some people, but it can also bring out the worst in other people. Like here, somebody dies and suddenly, cousin Larry shows up, and this is my favorite cousin, and he hadn't seen him for 20 years. But now he wants something. So the hypocrites, they seized on, because there's so many emotions that people are going through, so they seized on that. And so they said, what's going to be the easiest way to create an issue? And they said, this is it. We'll just say Omar is going to be the Khalifa. And that's what they did. So now Sa'ad bin Ubadah radiallahu anhu, who is the leader of Khazraj. If you remember, the Ansar had two major tribes, Khazraj and Aus. Khazraj was the larger tribe or clan, and they were related to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through his great-grandmother, the mother of Hazrat Abdul Muttalib, Bibi Salma radiallahu anha. She was from Khazraj, from Banu Najjar of Khazraj. And actually, Abu Ayyub Ansari radiallahu anhu was the most closely related to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from amongst the Ansar because of his relationship with her. So Abu Sa'ad bin Ubadah radiallahu anhu is there, and you have other Ansar there that are having this meeting. When Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu set out, Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah radiallahu anhu is on his way coming towards the masjid, and they meet him, and he sees them coming out. He says, "Where are you going?" He says, "Well, this is what's going on. We've got to go and deal with this." So they say to him, "You come with us as well." So they go. So the three of them go, and the meeting's going on, and so now when these three arrive, there's Abu Bakr kind of stands up and takes over the situation. And he addresses the Ansar, and he says, look, you are the Ansar. You are the helpers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and no one can take that away from you. And he praises their help and what they did for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for the religion of Islam, for those who immigrated, and all of these things. But he also then he says, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the leader will be from Quraysh. And they acknowledge this. They, because the thing is, what happens a lot of times is, and we'll see this also during the time of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that they had heard things, but sometimes you hear something but it's there in the back of your mind, but then you don't really remember it too well. But then something else happens and someone says something, and now all of a sudden you say, oh yeah, I remember that now. And so this is what happens here. When he says this, they all said, oh, none of them disputed, no, he didn't say that. They all agreed, and they said, okay, yes, we understand now. We know, that the leadership is not for us. And one of them stands up and said, look, we are the Ansar, we will always be the Ansar. So whoever will be the Khalifa, we will be his Ansar as well. We will help him as well. And so Abu Bakr, he says, look, the two of you, y'all can choose, but here are two men that you can choose from, Abu Bakr, Omar and Abu Ubaidah. Pick one of them. And the two of them take the hand of Abu Bakr and immediately give him allegiance. We give allegiance to you. So when these two do this, the rest of those that were there also came and gave him allegiance, except for Sa'd bin Ubadah, who did not give allegiance. But that gets into different aspect of things, and there might be something we cover later on. So now when this meeting is concluded, they all now come back to the masjid, and as they are coming back to the masjid, and they come to the house of Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, Ali radiallahu is just coming out from the grave of Rasulullah after having placed him in the Rawda. So Ali radiallahu is the one who placed him there, and he comes out, and now they complete the burial. I'm going to stop here because this will, I guess, next week, or it depends on what questions come up, we'll kind of talk about, because at this time when this happens, Imam Hassan al-Islam is 7 years old, Imam Hussein al-Islam is 6 years old, Ali radiallahu anhu at this time is 34 years old. The Fatima salamullah alayha, she's like mid-20s, and so we're going to kind of go over, reiterate certain points about Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein al-Islam as far as their connection with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as all of the things that happened during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because those will be important to remember as we move forward. And then we get into the Khilafah of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and the role of Ahlul Bayt within that Khilafah, and also get into Fidq and all of these things that people create a controversy over where there really should not be any. Fidq is the property that was placed in Bayt al-Mal that the Fatima salamullah alayha questions Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. But why does she question him? And that's an important point to understand. Because a lot of people get confused over this, and this is where you get the Shia who really manipulate this a lot. But even, unfortunately, most of the people that are supposed to be Sunni are clueless. Many of them, you ask them what is Fidq, they don't even know what Fidq is. Okay. And if you start talking to a Shia, all they're going to do is confuse you. And then a lot of those who even know what Fidq is, when they talk about it, again, you have to look at who's being spoken about. So if I look at the status and the character of Abu Bakr, and I look at the status and the character of Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha, and the love and affection between them, and we talked about this in Fridays, and we kind of go off on this for a couple of minutes. There's this idiot in Pakistan, who, if you remember, I spoke about it in Fridays. He made that statement a couple of years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, that that Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha, it was her khata, that she was mistaken, or it was her mistake when she asked for it. He obviously has no concept of who she is, what her status is, and why she even asked. She asked for the defense. Basically she's asking for this in order to be able, so that no one can later on blame Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu for what he did. But again, we'll go over that next week, inshallah. Again, there's so many aspects, and we'll see the role again, the role of Ahlul Bayt during the Khulafai Rashidin, and a lot of these things that people claim that Ali radhiallahu was upset with Abu Bakr, or Bibi Fatima salamullah alayhi was upset with Abu Bakr, or that Abu Bakr and Umar and all of them did this and that and all these other nonsense things that people throw out there, which contradict each one of their characters, and more so contradicts the trust that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had placed in them. So we'll go over all that, inshallah. Any questions? Anything I left out? Baya, Nazir? Anything I left out? Okay. Yusuf?
One quick question, Doctor.
Yes.
Why did the Sa'd bin Ubadah didn't take allegiance with
Abu
Bakr?
Bakr? He had his issues, but the Khalifa, you don't have to have a unanimous decision, because Sa'd is part of the Shura. Okay? I mean, he is part of those companions who are held in high esteem. He is a Badri companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he's not just any companion. And this was his choice. Okay? And he had a right to make that choice. He did not. What did I say? He did not challenge the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu. Nor did he, propagate anything against the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu.
But supported him. He supported him, right?
I mean, yeah, he supported him in when he was given orders and stuff. He did what he needed to do. But at that time, as far as giving formal allegiance, he did not. The same thing like with Ali radiallahu anhu, because a lot of people say, he didn't give allegiance. Well, he did everything that anyone under an allegiance would do until 6 months. When he gave the formal allegiance, so that people would it kind of quiet people down, because you have rumors, and again, hypocrites take every opportunity to create issues. People is creating these issues, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu never demanded the Ali, the bay'ah of Ali. So he came, and they did this publicly so that now it would quiet down all of these people, talking who should not be talking. Because just like when we look at like the incident of Ifk, you have this accusation against Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha that's made by the hypocrites. But unfortunately, you have people who were decent who got caught up in it as well. And so that becomes the danger. If you allow something like this to keep going on, then you're going to have decent people that will get caught up in it. And so for the protection of those people, then certain things were done later on, simply to make things more clear. Okay?
I have one question.
Yes.
I want to know what the idea of Shia come from.
We will.
How
We will get into that when we get into the Khilafah of Sayyidina Ali.
So what does make Imam Ali different from the other Abu Bakr or Umar or Usman?
Because he's not only Sahabi, he's Ahlul Bayt.
Okay.
So people will use that. Again, you have people that go both ways with these things. So, the Khawarij are on one end. You have the Shia and the Rafzi. Within the Shia, of course, you have so many different groups. So just because someone's Shia doesn't mean he's Shia. Like, it's sort of like, I guess, a simple example for me would be like cancer. One cancer is not equal to another cancer. Okay? Simplest thing. One disease is not equal to another disease. Okay?
So what's the
So-
meaning of Shia?
Well, Shia technically means party or group. That's what it means, okay? Literally. So during the Khilafah of Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu wajh, those who were fighting, in the army of Ali, they were known as Shi'ani Ali. Those who were fighting in the army of Muawiyah, radiallahu anhu, they were known as Shi'ani Muawiyah. Okay? The Shia of Muawiyah, the Shia of Ali. Okay? Later on, this took a totally different meaning. And this is where, and it starts off as political differences, but then they incorporate, because you have hypocrisy everywhere. Like when we spoke, I mentioned, the Battle of the Camels. So you have hypocrites who've infiltrated both armies, the army of Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu wajh, as well as the army of Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha. And overnight, they create this battle by attacking, in the middle of the night, attacking one side and saying Ali sent us, and attacking the other side and saying Aisha sent us, and now you've got war going on. Okay? Because the plan was, as far as that battle is concerned, the plan that had been agreed to the afternoon before was that the next morning after Fajr, Ali radiallahu anhu would meet with Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, and the two of them would discuss what's going on. These hypocrites knew that if they talk, well, then these guys would get exposed, and they didn't want peace, because if peace came, and this is what with Ali radiallahu anhu, he said, because people were accusing him that you're not taking the revenge for Uthman. Because Uthman radiallahu anhu has been martyred, and you're not taking blood for blood. And Ali radiallahu anhu said, whose blood can I take? How can I take anyone's blood when I don't have any witnesses to the exact crime as to who truly did it? And how can I take blood until I have peace within the empire? Because once you have peace, now you can go back and sort out, okay, who did what and what, right? They didn't want peace. Just like today, they don't want peace. There's so much money in war. No one wants peace.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah?
Create a war to make money.
Yeah. Create war, make money, keep everybody divided.
Yeah.
And this is what's going on globally now. Same thing. So, again, people don't change. Greed, lust, all of these vices that are within people, it hasn't changed from the beginning of time.
Been going on forever since they
Yes. And like I say, the only difference now, from now and then, was that now, all I have to do to kill people is press a button. And 10,000 miles away, I've killed somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Then you had to actually fight them. Later on, the choice of killing will become poisoning. But you still had to, do something. It's not as easy as it is now. Well, the other thing that people don't think about is, we think about, why didn't they just talk? Well, if I wrote a letter from here, it would take a month for the letter to get where it needed to go back then. It's not like I can just Skype somebody and say, why are you doing this? And then that letter has exchanged so many hands in between. It's like, when Uthman radiallahu anhu is martyred, the same people that killed him took the fingers of his wife Naila radiallahu anha, and his shirt, which is drenched in his blood, and they immediately made their way to Sham, to Damascus. And in the masjid, on the member of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the member is the member of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, doesn't matter where it is. On the member, they are swearing by Allah that Ali orchestrated this. Alright? So, to create issues, to create all this turmoil, to create, so this is why, and so like I said, when we come to that, and I kind of go over the history there as to how the groups formed, and then how the groups deviated. Because if I look at Shi'ani Ali, those people that were in the army of Ali, all of them are Sunni. None of them are Shia as we understand Shia today.
So
Okay.
back then there was no Shia anyway.
Yeah, there was no Shia. There's no Shia like there is Shia today. No.
My point is.
But Shia, the word Shia simply means group or party. This is why when Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah is accused, when they come and they want him to give a fatwa against Imam Zayd, who is the son of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, who is the son of Imam Hussein al-Islam. So when they want him to give a fatwa, when Banu Umayyah wants Imam Abu Hanifa to give a fatwa against Imam Zayd bin Ali, he refuses. But it's interesting how he refuses. He says, "Ana min shiyatihi." I'm from his group. I support him. That's what it meant. I'm his supporter. So you have him being accused of being Shia, of being that kind of Shia. Not the Shia he was. He was a Shia. He was Sunni, but he supported Imam Zayd.
Being in his group.
Yeah, he says I'm his supporter. I'm his group. That's what he meant.
So, but you also have Abu Bakr Siddiq.
Right. Yes.
Abu,
But if you look at the modern day Shia. Okay, so again, like I said, even amongst the modern day Shias, you have different groups. Okay, you have those that are known as Zaydis. So Zaydi Shias, they claim to follow Imam Zayd, the one that I just mentioned. It's interesting, because Imam Zayd, we talked about this a while back. When Imam Zayd was getting his army ready against Hisham bin Abdul Malik, who was the king, and all the atrocities that they were committing. So he gets an army of 8,000 men together. They leave Kufa. They're headed, in that direction. Hisham's army is 20,000 men. They're men that come to Imam Zayd from his army. And they say to him, look, we're willing to give our lives and our wealth for you, but we want you to curse Abu Bakr and Umar. And he says, how can I say anything against those about whom I have not heard anything good from my forefathers? We talked about why he uses that wording. So they say, oh, you have left the way. You have left Rafzi. And he says, no, you are the Rafzi. So he's the first one to use the word Rafzi. The Rawafiz. These are the Rawafiz. So this is another category of Shia. These are the ones who curse Abu Bakr and Umar. The Zaydis, they don't curse because of Imam Zayd said, how can I say anything? They simply say, oh, Ali should have been the first Khalifa, but whatever happened, we don't curse anybody. Okay. There are very few of those left. Many of the Shia in Yemen are Zaydis. If you look at Iran, before Khomeini came, most of them you could categorize as Zaydis. After Khomeini came, now most of them are Rafzis. The Shia in the subcontinent, India and Pakistan, most of them are Rafzis. I won't say all, but most of them.
The Shia in Syria, which is Alawi.
Yeah, well, there you have Alawi, who that's a total, even the Shia don't accept them as Shia. Because the true Alawi say that Ali was God incarnate, the original Alawis. But then Alawi also has other meanings too, because Alawi also can mean the descendants of Ali. So it kind of depends on how you're using the meaning. Yeah, so there's a lot of groups. But we will get to the basics of most of these, and again, a lot of them have this connection, the deviation where you're dealing with Ahlul Bayt, because their love is an obligation, but these people, claiming to love them are now cursing the companions, which is not love of them, because if you, again, as I talk about the Khilafah of Abu Bakr and the Khilafah of Umar and Uthman, and we look at the role that Ali and Ahlul Bayt and Hassan Imam Hussein Islam played in these Khilafahs, there's nothing but love between them. But you have to be able to look at that and see it. Otherwise, because you can have two people looking at the same thing and each one seeing something totally different. Everyone is always biased. Anyone who says, "Oh no, I'm not biased," he's lying. everyone's biased. You know, the thing is, I need to bias myself in accordance with what Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam want me to do. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you know, what he said about his companions and what he said about Ahlul Bayt, so I need to keep all of that in focus and bias myself according to that. Okay.
So is that what caused the two? They talk about having two different types of Muslims. That's what caused it.
Oh, there are more than two different types. You know that. Yeah. No. But what most people consider like the Sunni Shia split, that comes later. And the origins of that will be during the Khilafah of Ali, or at least what people use as an excuse to do this. And then what will happen with Imam Hussein al-Islam in Karbala will be kind of the catalyst that gets everything moving. Because after that, you're going to get certain other groups that come out, and we'll talk about those as well, inshallah. But you know, the thing of saying that, oh, you know, there are two different types, there's Sunni and Shia, that's an oversimplification of it. But you know, it would be nice if you could simply say you're Muslim, but you know, that's not the way the situations are now, and you have to kind of be wary of people as well. But you know, generally speaking, like what we've talked about, if there are certain basic things that are solid, then you know, it becomes easy to distinguish who's what. And of course, Iman, which is the love of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That, I mean, that is Iman. That is what the kalma is. And the love, because everybody claims to love. But you know, love has certain definitions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in the Quran, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given us as well. And so, you know, we've talked about those in the past in other places. We'll talk about those more as we continue on, and I'll come back to those definitions later as well, inshallah, and the references to the Quran and the Hadith. I think we'll end here today, inshallah. You know, so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us and help us, and may make us understand and fill our hearts with His love and the love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all those whom they love, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.